Hey everybody, it's Wendy. I know I look like a crazy person. I was in the studio painting when I remembered that I'm supposed to take the wine to the Father's Day celebration tomorrow. So I am racing to the liquor store and I'm taking you with me because I have something that's heavy on my heart that I feel like I want to say. So forgive my appearance. But I want to start off by saying Happy Juneteenth to you. And I need to confess, I have actually never said until this moment Happy Juneteenth to anybody. Because confession number 2 or 3, if you count the wine thing that I'm already going to have to pray away, I didn't even know what Juneteenth was. I'd never even heard Juneteenth probably until June 19th of last year, I'm embarrassed to say. But anyway, I have this thing I want to tell you about because I didn't know about it and I found out about it, and I figured it's an important thing to know. I can't get it off my mind, and if I didn't know about it, well then maybe some of you all don't know about it, so I'll just tell you about it. And it's a story that is really remarkable, a true story. It happened right here in my home state of Arkansas. And those of you all who don't know Arkansas, let me catch you up because the setting is important. Arkansas, which you may think of as being, you know, the home of the Clintons, or the place where the Little Rock Nine and Crisis at Central High happened, or maybe you know that we call hogs at all of our sports events, and maybe you think of us as the missing tooth capital of the world, Deliverance, the backwoods, and maybe we are all those things, but really we are so much more, and so amazing a state. I almost don't even want to tell people from outside the state because we kind of like it like this, but we're a farm state. Arkansas is corner to corner a farm state. We have the Delta down in the south, and we grow all kinds of crops down there because it's warm and wet and a little too hot for my taste, too many mosquitoes. But the greatest place in the world, because the soil is the richest in the world, the greatest place to grow soybeans and cotton and rice, catfish. And then in the other half of the state, the northern half of the state, it's cooler, and it's where the Ozark Mountains are. So we raise livestock up there. And I know a little bit about this because the story I need to tell you took place in a town that I got to live in as a young adult for 7 years on a cattle ranch way up north. And this happened in a town called Harrison in Boone County, Arkansas. Now, Boone County is way far north, which means it's probably pretty white when it comes to race. And our concentration of blacks in Arkansas is kind of concentrated down in the southern part of the state, in the Delta. And when I moved up there from central Arkansas, because in central Arkansas, where we don't do a whole lot of farming, we don't know about a lot of farming, we do other stuff. But the central part of Arkansas is pretty diverse. But I moved up there to Harrison, and there were no blacks in Harrison. It really caught my attention. And I thought there were no blacks in Harrison because all the black folks knew that was the national headquarters of the KKK. It's not something that the folks up there are particularly proud of, and I never met anybody that was a member of the KKK. They didn't have time. They're farmers. If you didn't know about how farmers live, well, I didn't either until I moved up there to the farm. I opened a dance studio because I'm no farmer. But the farm life is unrelenting. It's the hardest work you could ever do. It's back-breaking work. It's the kind of work that you do from sun up until the job's done. You don't get a day off. You don't get Juneteenth off. You don't get Christmas Day off, for that matter, because cows got to be fed. So anyway, I move up there to this entirely white town. And one time I even asked somebody, how come there's no blacks up there? I won't even tell you the response I got, so I didn't talk about it again. But the place is so close to my heart because the people that are up there are just like none I've ever met. Not only do they work 365 days a year, they work harder than anybody I've ever known, but they're the kindest people too, of anybody I've ever met. For instance, if you were to forget about a candle in your house and it caught your house on fire and it threatened to burn down a dance studio that you built onto your house, it wouldn't be the volunteer fire department that got there to put it out. It would be the other local farmers that came there and risked their lives beating it out with wet blankets that put it out. It's that kind of folks that are there. You know, the kind of people that they don't go to the doctor until a bone is showing because they don't have time. They're not really into, you know, national politics and what's going on in society and culture because they don't have time. And they just figure, yeah, you know, we're just concentrating on trying to get our families fed, and for that matter, your family fed. So here's the story I want to tell you. It didn't always happen that there were no blacks in Harrison. In fact, after emancipation, 10% of the population of Harrison was black. I couldn't believe it. And the blacks that were there, while they didn't own any land, because even I knew that they didn't actually get the mule and 40 acres, they were working and coexisting with the whites quite well. You know, they had the kinds of jobs because they weren't landowners. Some of them were sharecropping and squirreling away as much money as they could, hoping to buy land. Some of them were, you know, barbers. They were cooks. They were service people. And as long as they lived in servitude, as long as they were bowing and scraping the good old-fashioned way, everything was rocking along just fine. They did consider themselves in Harrison a sundown town, which meant that after sundown, blacks didn't need to be out. But nevertheless, there was a railroad that went through Harrison, and railroad workers would pass through town. I'm sure Harrison was happy for them to come in and spend their money and keep on moving. And those railroad workers were mostly coming from up north. Well, in 1905, a couple of years before my grandmother was born, 1905, the railroad went bankrupt, and it stranded about 50 guys up there, blacks, who had been traveling there from the north. They'd been working for the railroad. They'd been earning money and had never really been bowing and scraping and in servitude to white people. And when they got stranded there, they said, well, what are we going to do now? Well, we got a pocket of money. We'll buy some land, start farming. So they bought some land and started farming, and they weren't going to be bowing and scraping to people. They didn't have time. So the white folks didn't take kindly to that at all. Between two separate incidents and over the course of 4 years, the white folks had not only raided a jail and pulled out a couple of black guys, taken them to the town square and whipped them and sent them on their merry way out of town, but they told all the other blacks, you're out too. We're not having you here. And over the course of the next 4 years, and with, you know, similar instances of shooting out windows and what have you, they got rid of all but one black woman that they called Aunt Vine. I'm sure she made really good food or something. And so I wanted to tell my son about this. My son lives up there on the family cattle ranch. He and my daughter are two of those people that, you know, work from sun up to whenever the job gets done. And I wanted to tell him about that. I thought it was an important thing for him to know. And somehow during the course of the conversation, I made the mistake of putting two words together that didn't hit him right. White and privilege. And you can imagine it was met with, whoa, wait, Mom. Let me tell you something. My grandfather worked his ass off until the day he died, literally, on the farm. And you can't tell me that anything was ever handed to us, you know. And now I'm following in those footsteps. You know, he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and comes in at 10 o'clock at night. I know all that stuff. And I tried to explain to him, no, I'm not talking about anything ever being handed to anybody. I'm just saying you were never denied anything because of the color of your skin. But that didn't mean, you were handed anything. Anyway, during the course of that conversation I was having with my son, I found out that story about those guys that had gotten stranded up there. And before I went much further and told anybody about it, I decided I better get my facts straight. So I started looking into it, and I found out that what happened in those years that when my grandmother was born was happening all over the South. I mean, not just in Tulsa where they, bombed out and burned out Greenwood, which I confess, again, still learning about. But it happened in Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana and Mississippi and Arkansas and Tennessee and Georgia and all across the South. But here's the deal. Those slaves that were emancipated and that had, begun to squirrel away money and buy their own little plots of land here and there, by 1920, there was nearly 1 million of them farming. And they were farming 42 million acres in the South. Today, black farmers rank in the thousands, not the millions, in the thousands. And the reason for that is not because they were all run out of town on a rail, but because the thing that has kept farmers in our country going for a long time is financing. Financing in large part by the federal government, the USDA. The USDA has a branch called Farmers Home Administration, and they make loans to small farmers, family farmers, to keep them in business in times when, it costs you more to raise the food than you get when you sell it. Commodity prices go down and inflation goes up, and we still need those farmers to grow our food next year, so it's in our best interest to support them, so we give them these low interest loans. Well, from the beginning of that program, low interest loans were made to white farmers only, not black farmers. And you can look at a lot of old time, injustices in race and say, that sucked. I hate that happened, and if I had anything to do about it, I'd change that. But the fact of the matter is that practice of not lending money to farmers of color continued into, guess when? The 90s. Not the 1890s, but the 1990s. Like when my son, the farmer, was already born. And so this particular injustice, which was carrying on for years, was not one of those things that was, the sins of our grandfather's grandfather, but the current day problems that black farmers had. And the thing is that the USDA didn't say, okay guys, we're going to give you all this money and we don't want you giving it to any black folks. But the people that controlled where the money went were these locally elected committees, and blacks didn't even have the right to vote until the year I was born. So the committees were not willing to give money to the black farmers who were trying to get their crops off the ground. So when I found out about that, I was kind of shocked. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's what this thing called systemic racism, which until I found out this story, I probably could not have given you a single example of systemic racism. But that, along with a litany of, probably 1,000 individual decisions that hurt black farmers, ran so many black farmers out of business that today 98% of rural farmland is owned by white farmers. And let me tell you, white farmers haven't had it easy either. Now, I bet you some of them, anybody that'd be watching this video has probably already yelled that at me, but white farmers haven't had it easy either. I mean, the numbers of white farmers are dropping off the map about as quickly as Monsanto's or TIAA or any of those other big, huge corporations can buy them up. But what ran the white farmers off of the farmlands were those big corporations and investment firms. And they bought people out of their farms, priced them out, bought them out. But I got to thinking, my two kids stand to inherit some property, the property that they're working today. And those black farmers up there that worked that land even before it was theirs don't have the ability to pass that land down to their children. In fact, I can't even be 100% sure that the very land that my kids are in line to inherit wasn't some of that land that was taken from black folks. And then I started doing the math even further. Okay, so we acknowledge that we built the wealth of our nation on the backs of black people who came here and brought seeds. In fact, I didn't even know that my Meemaw's fried okra, we have blacks to thank for that, because black women who knew that they were likely to get captured and enslaved braided okra seeds into their hair and brought them with them. And that's how come we have fried okra on the table tomorrow at Father's Day. And so I started thinking, if those kind of practices that were going on then and up through the 90s, I didn't know anything about, nobody ever talks about it, and I'm scared to talk about race. I've probably already said 13 things that are inappropriate. And let me say right now, I apologize for that. It's out of my own ignorance, and I welcome correction. But I just felt like it's one observation of something that's happening right here, right now, that I didn't know about, that maybe I should have. And I'm sorry I didn't. Let me finish by saying this one last thing. If you want to look up any of this stuff, and if I post this video, I'll put some links down there for some of the ways that I found out about it. But if you want to know when it was that the last update to this story happened, guess when it was? It was 8 days ago. Yeah. 8 days ago, a federal judge blocked some money from going to some black farmers who were asking for debt relief, because of course they couldn't borrow low interest money the way white farmers have been able to, but they were able to borrow some high interest money, higher than their white counterparts were getting. And because it was so much higher than their white counterparts were getting, there's been efforts in Congress to try to give them debt relief. And a piece of that was snuck into the COVID relief package. And while only about 16,000 folks had signed up to get it because they could meet all of the crazy guidelines you have to meet in order to qualify for that money, a federal judge has now blocked their access to it, and he did that 8 days ago. So even as of today, the 41 million acres of farmland and 1 million black farmers whose land we not only took from them after we built our nation's wealth off of them, we keep taking from them, and we keep taking from them. And I'm sorry that we keep taking from them, and I'm sorry I didn't know that already. I hope I haven't seemed too preachy, because I'm really just more embarrassed that those things have happened right here in my own home state. Maybe I wasn't paying attention in Arkansas history class. Maybe I was too busy flirting with Stephen Mera to even notice. But I think it's an important thing to know. And that's just one little example of a way that I think systemic racism still exists today on a large scale. And I hope this story helps you think the way it has for me. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the black experience is like. And I don't profess to know still what the black experience is like. And I'm afraid to talk about race because I'm afraid it exposes my own ignorance. But there you have it. Happy Juneteenth, everybody.